So I'm one of those world travelers, global citizens of sort, who ended up giving up my US citizenship and got a St. Lucian passport instead. You can see here's my old US passport. They punched the holes in it. And here's my St. Lucian passport. So in this video, I'd like to talk about your different options regarding like using an agency to do like to renounce your US citizenship or get another citizenship, or the process to do all of this on your own. Or more specifically, is it right for you to use an agency or not? Personally, I did it completely on my own without an agency or anything. But I've met many people who have used the agencies I'll mention in this video. And I just like to provide a honest take on them. Based off what I've experienced trying to use them, as well as people I've met who actually went through the full process with them. To start with the biggest agency, Nomad Capitalist, they charge much more than most or all other agencies as far as I'm aware, and there's a lot of haters about them online. Like a lot of people talk bad about them. Many people even go so far as to call them a scam. There's a website called like Nomad Capitalist is a scam or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't go so far to say that. They charge way too much for their services, and they're a bit predatory, it seems like, from what I've heard from other people. And like, they seem to want way too much money, as well as they end up requesting more money than they initially like outlined for your plan. But they don't outright scam you. Like, they do provide the services they say they're going to provide. It's just, to me, Nomad Capitalist doesn't really provide the white glove service that they like market themselves to provide, and they're not really worth the price. As for my personal experience with Nomad Capitalist, I didn't really have much of an experience. I contacted them, and I believe it was like 2019 to become a client, and partially due to my age, as well as probably just generally how they operate, they just were extremely dismissive, did not give me really any answers or any replies, and wouldn't even hop on a call or anything to discuss what they would be providing. So I just decided it wasn't worth working with them and paying them. They wanted like a $20,000 retainer fee or something like that before they would even speak to me. So I just thought, you know what, I don't trust these people, I'm not going to do it with them. As for everyone else I've met who've used Nomad Capitalist, they describe a typical agency sort of experience where you apply to be a client, you pay the retainer fee, and then they'll hop on a call with you and go through the process. But they describe like far from the white glove sort of service. They still had to go find like whichever hospital they need to get their health background checks at for the applications to the CBI programs, and they described basically having to do all the legwork themselves other than submitting the documents and talking to the lawyers directly. They usually described as if they were just a number, and there was quite a bit of miscommunication for the couple people I spoke to who actually did use them and completed the process through them, but maybe that was just an issue with them personally. Can't be 100% sure about that. With that being said, based off their experience, they ended up having quite a bit of like a few month delay in their CBI process and getting residency as well. So that's not really ideal, but I can't really 100% blame Nomad Capitalist for that, because I'm not 100% sure if that was Nomad Capitalist's fault or the people I spoke to. Based off what I've heard from other people and the people I've talked to who have used Nomad Capitalist, as well as my personal experience with them, I generally say it's not, like, I wouldn't recommend going with Nomad Capitalist if you want to do a CBI program or a residency program somewhere. They're really not worth the premium they charge. They don't seem to provide the white glove service, and I don't know, my experience, I feel like you should at least be willing to hop on a call with someone if they're serious about getting into the program and becoming a client, but they would not even do this for me, so I don't know, I wouldn't recommend them. This is primarily due to the high fees though, and the upfront fees they wanted. I find this very predatory and quite frankly outrageous when comparing it to other agencies and simply doing it on your own with a lawyer. To move on from that, the next most popular agency after Nomad Capitalist is Henley and Partners, oftentimes called Henley Global. You might not have heard of them because they don't really post YouTube videos or anything like that. They don't really do much marketing as far as I'm aware at all. They are a more bureaucratic corporate firm, but they seem to have good results, and the people I've met who've used them have had relatively good experiences. From what I've gathered from other people, as well as my brief experience talking to them after I got my St. Lucia's citizenship and gave up my US citizenship, I did some speaking to them afterwards, and overall it seems like they're really competent and they know what they're doing. There's no shenanigans involved with their services. They're a little bit pricey, not as much as Nomad Capitalist, but still in my opinion a little bit too expensive. And the process overall, they handle it relatively well, but it is a bit slower than doing it on your own or with some other providers. I'm not really sure why, but that was the experience most of the people I've met, or all of the people I've met who've used them. It was a little bit slower than they expected, and than the firm initially outlined when they did the initial consultation with the client. So overall, I wouldn't strongly recommend them, but they're not a particularly bad option if you have a substantial amount of money and just want a competent corporate firm to handle it all for you. Another agency that it's a bit smaller, you might know of them because they do make YouTube videos, called the Wealthy Expat. They're pretty good. I haven't personally used them, but I've met many people who have, again, and to me, they're my go-to option if you want to handle like a Dubai company or anything like that. They really know what they're doing there. They've locked down the procedure amazingly. It's faster than all other providers, it seems like, and it's what they specialize in. To be clear though, I used to have some contacts with some other lawyers in the country, in Dubai for this, but since like basically the last year or two, they've stopped accepting new clients. So now at this point, Wealthy Expat's the best option in my opinion, for the like Dubai company formation and all the elements of dealing with that, like residency, opening a bank account, all of that. Wealthy Expat is of course a bit more expensive than just doing it on your own and finding a lawyer in the country like I've previously done with people, but overall everyone I've met who has used them has reported a phenomenal experience, that it was fast, hassle-free, and they handled everything for all of them, truly in a white glove service sort of way. Where basically they would pick you up to do all the appointments, they would handle all the transfers between the lawyers, everything. Basically the Wealthy Expat team, they really do have good connections and seem to know what they're doing. To be clear about the pricing though, using Wealthy Expat will cost you between $8,000 and $12,000 more than doing it on your own after finding a competent lawyer within the country. However, keep in mind, most people I've met who have done it on their own end up, it takes a few months longer. I'm not sure if this is just because the lawyers they use are slower or because the process is just more complicated and they don't have it as streamlined, but it usually ends up taking a few months longer to get the residency and the company set up and everything done. And a few people, when doing it on their own, end up having nightmare experiences where they never actually get the company set up, or it might take even 6 months, 8 months longer than expected, and it's just a disaster. I didn't really have that experience, and the people I've worked with didn't. However, as I said, those law firms are no longer accepting new clients, so you can't really use those. So at this point, I would recommend just using using Wealthy Expat if you do want to set up a Dubai company, because if you're making enough money where a Dubai company makes sense for tax savings and all of that, the extra $8,000 to $12,000 you'll pay to use them will be made up more or less just through the tax savings by having the company set up a few months earlier. So overall, I'd say Wealthy Expat is a good choice if you have a Dubai-centered strategy you're trying to implement. One more smaller agency out there is Offshore Citizen. They're also on YouTube. Overall, I'd say, I haven't met anyone who've used them, but based off what they say on their website, as well as more importantly, their YouTube videos and the guy who runs it, they seem to run a trustworthy, reasonable service. They seem to more or less know what they're talking about. So I can't say I'd 100% recommend them to do a full process through with them, because I haven't met anyone who actually has done that with them or how they go about it. If they just refer you to like a lawyer they know and have used in the past, or if they do more than that, I'm not really 100% sure. But they seem to know what they're talking about, and they offer just one-on-one consulting, as do I, for a CBI process. So if you have any small questions, very reasonable option to get in contact with and ask those questions you want answers to or clarification on before proceeding on your own. There are a few other websites you'll see online whenever you're searching up CBI programs. They're usually smaller websites, and overall, while I can't speak for every single one of them, I did end up contacting a few of them when I was going to do the St. Lucia program, and my experience wasn't really good at all. They had very bad response times, and basically they seem to just refer you to lawyers they know and then take a heavy commission and just upsell you everything while providing you nothing extra. Maybe this isn't how all of them operate, and well, it seemed like they weren't even really running the show. It was just the lawyers, and they just act as an intermediary. And if you're going to be dealing with the lawyers directly, you might as well just go to the lawyers directly, save the fees, and generally not have to interact between an intermediary like this. Also, while normally I only do this for friends I meet and people I do business with, I am now going to be doing some consulting for CBI programs myself. If you have any questions you just want clarification on or anything like that, or want to do a strategy sort of thing and kind of plan out what would be best for you and your lifestyle living around the world and trying to be tax-free, whatever it might be, I can do that. Or if you want a truly white glove experience, that's what I used to provide to the people I worked with, where I find the hospitals and they need to get their evaluation in, find the notary or whatever they might need to get the documents done correctly for these CBI programs. I and the people I work with can handle all that to get a truly white glove experience more than other providers seem to provide. I don't do the Dubai company stuff anymore because, as I explained, my contacts there have stopped accepting new clients, and yeah. But for any Caribbean programs, Turkish program, all of that, I can help with that. Okay, now for a final option, just doing it on your own, going without an agency or any outside help. This is the route I went with, and it's not too bad. You're gonna need to take a few weeks extra before you start the process to vet the people you're gonna be working with, some lawyers, all of that, and really create a plan for yourself on what will work with you, and maybe even contact some lawyers in those countries you plan to get residency in or citizenship in. Make sure your situation fits with them and with the program. But overall, it's not too troublesome. So long as you find a good, competent lawyer, it's not going to be too difficult to do it on your own. It'll just require a little bit more legwork, research, and understanding on your part. But you'll end up paying between usually around $4,000 for some residency programs, up to around $12,000 in terms of lawyer fees for the CBI programs. Plus, of course, the government fees and taxes and all of that stuff. So usually when working with the lawyers, to make sure you have a legit one, they'll usually want around 2/3 or half of the payment up front. They won't ever, in my experience, ever ask for the entire payment up front. They'll ask for around half, maybe a little bit more than half, and then whenever you get approved for the program, you're going to need to submit the government fees and the program fees, of course. And then once you're 100% approved for a program and you're receiving the documents, then they'll want the final half and complete the payment and transaction with them. If a lawyer is asking for everything up front, personally I would not use them, because it reduces their incentive to do the process quickly and get it all done. Most of the lawyers actually, the one I used in St. Lucia, will have a guarantee where if you do not get approved for a program, they'll actually refund part of their lawyer fees. So what I'm trying to say is vet the lawyers you're going to use. Make sure they don't have any like predatory pricing or like conditions. They should be like, it should be relatively good and on your side with things. So yeah, that's just a good way to make sure you're dealing with like a reputable lawyer. You can also, of course, make sure to go to the CBI program's website, and a lot of the time they'll list law firms that are approved or that claim to operate this service. Not all of them always do provide this service or are open to new clients, but generally it's a good place to start if you do want to do it on your own, or completely on your own. As for non-CBI programs, while sometimes they can cost up to like $8,000, generally it is more around $1,500 to $4,000 of a retainer fee. Sometimes you will end up paying that 100% upfront. So just keep that in mind if you are doing like a residency program in, I don't know, Brazil or something. You might have to pay the lawyer $1,500, $2,000 as a retainer to really begin the process in the first place. And that should cover most of the fees for them. Might be plus or minus $1,000 in the end. Alright, so my overall recommendations is if you have over 8 figures, yeah, hire an agency. I don't know which one I'd specifically go with. I'd probably do Wealthy Expat if I was doing anything related to Dubai. And then if not, probably Henley Global. You could choose Nomad Capitalist, but as I said, it seems like they don't offer much extra benefit over Henley Global, while still costing substantially more. But if you don't quite yet have 8 figures of net worth, if you're going to be doing a CBI program and it's not urgent, like you're trying to avoid hitting the 2 million mark on your US citizenship to renounce it before the exit tax applies, unless you're in some special circumstance like that, you can just end up going and contacting the lawyers yourself and doing it on your own. Might take a few months longer than using an agency. Might not take a few months longer. It might just take more of your time. But at that point, I'd say it's worth just doing it on your own. But otherwise, I'd say just getting some like consulting, just an hour or something, from either Offshore Citizen or myself to get a little clarification on different topics or maybe suggestions on how to go about it, or creating a plan if you don't have one already, for how you'll like tax plan and generally set up a global lifestyle. Would probably be better use of money, and then just simply go your own way. Unless you really have more than 8 figures, I don't think it's really worth to use most agencies, in most cases at least. The one exception is when it comes to Dubai. If you're making more than $10,000 a month and want to take like advantage of a Dubai program, Wealthy Expat, like they do charge more than lawyers within the country, but they know what they're doing. It's hassle-free, and they end up being quicker than most other like law firms and all of that. So I think it's actually worth it. You won't end up paying more when taking into account the tax savings you'll save doing the process a month or 2 sooner, maybe 3 months sooner. If that changes, of course, and Wealthy Expat isn't so good, or anything else changes with these agencies, I'll try to pin a comment explaining whatever changes might have occurred in my new suggestions. But yeah, so don't buy into all the marketing and all the hype around a lot of these CBI agencies, or generally the like global citizen focused agencies for relocating around the world. Most of it is just marketing. Unless you have more than 8 figures of net worth, it's generally not worth paying for one of the agencies, and a lot of the time they provide subpar service where it's a bit slower than doing it on your own anyways. So really, if you have the time or a little bit of the experience, I'd say it's better to generally just do it on your own. But yeah, with that being said, bye-bye.